Hey everyone, today I'm going to be replacing the power steering pump on my 2004 Chevy Colorado. The pump works great still, but the reason for replacing it is there is a gasket between the pump and the reservoir that, in my case, when it gets below freezing, it starts leaking everywhere, and I'm about to sell the truck, so wanted to replace it before doing so. I'll also be exchanging the drive belt while I'm doing this because I have to take it off anyway. I'll also be flushing the fluid, so this video should help you guys with all three of those things. I'm following the directions from 355 Nation, pretty great forum, lots of threads, and really all the work I've done has come from advice from these guys, so check them out and we'll get right to it. Alright, the first thing I'll be doing is taking off this air filter housing. It's just going to give me a little bit more room to get to the power steering pump. Of course, you won't have to do this if you're just flushing the fluid or if you're just replacing the belt. But anyway, there's three 13mm bolts holding this on. So take all those out. You're going to need an extension to get to some of these, and then just this electrical wiring needs to come off, and this clamp needs to be loosened, and then everything just comes out. So now that that's out, you can see we just got a ton of room to work on this power steering pump and get to the pulley and everything. So now let's go underneath the truck. So that is the bottom of the power steering pump up here. I believe this is the return line. This is the supply line. And now I will probably flush the system of all the fluid. The replacement pump I got made very clear that you should flush the system before installing the new pump. Makes sense. You want to get all the possible shavings, sediment, whatever's in your system out before you install the new pump. Alright, so now I'm ready to take off the return line to the power steering pump. And the next thing I'm going to do, I also saw on a forum, and I thought it was pretty neat. So they got some clear plastic tubing, 3/8 inch inner diameter. They capped it off with a brass fitting, and so this section goes on the power steering pump. So pretty much the reservoir remains full once you cap it off with this line. This fitting right here goes onto the return line, and that allows the fluid to flow out here, and you can see your fluids start to get lighter and lighter, hopefully, the more you flush it. So of course this goes into some milk jug or some container you have, and I'll show you guys how this looks like once I have it put on. So the only thing you need to disconnect this return line, this black one, is a pair of pliers, and there's a clamp right at the base of the power steering pump. And of course put a container underneath to catch the fluid that's about to spew out. Alright, so the capped clear tubing is connected right to the base of the power steering pump, so the fluid in the reservoir is essentially now in this tube. The return line is here, and that's where I connected it to the clear tubing. and that goes into a container to catch it. So now I'll lift up the truck and turn the wheels back and forth, however long it takes to get some more of this old fluid out. So the truck's up on blocks now, and one last thing to remember, of course, take off the cap of the reservoir, otherwise you can have a really hard time getting the fluid out. And without turning the wheels, you can see already it's starting to flow out, and it does look a little darker than what was in the reservoir, so pretty good idea that we flushed it. So yeah, to get the fluid out, all you do is just turn the wheel back and forth all the way 5-10 times. Really just bleeds out everything in the system. And once we've done this, we'll fill the reservoir back up with some new fluid, and just keep doing it until the fluid is pretty much new, and then we can install the power steering pump. So here's the fluid from the initial run. It was pretty darn black. Here's the fluid from the second flush. Getting better, but we'll probably do it one more time. Alright, so after 3 flushes, once again the first fluid, the second fluid, and we're starting to get decently clear with the third one. So now I will be taking out the power steering pump, so I'm gonna put the truck back on the ground. So now I'll be taking off the drive belt, and the way to do this is, so I loaned a tool from AutoZone, just a Serpentine belt tool, and there is a square notch down there where this goes into. I'll get under the truck real quick and I'll show you in more detail. Then you push it to the right, and this allows for the tension to be released, and you can take the belt off. So as I was saying, the square notch is right in there where the tool goes into, right up here. And yeah, just if you're facing the truck, go clockwise and it will release the tension off the belt. So the belt's off. This is the old belt, as you can see, starting to get some cracking, so probably about time to replace it. Here's the new belt in comparison. And of course make sure they're the same length before you start putting this in. But now that the belt's off, I can take out the power steering pump. There's 3 13mm bolts behind here. Let me get the drawing really quick. So yeah, like shown here, there's 3 13mm bolts that hold the power steering pump in, and you can access it through the holes in the pulley right here. So now that I have those 13mm bolts removed, I was able to get the power steering pump out. There was a few connectors. There's one on here and one at the bottom just for wiring, so make sure to get rid of those. So now the only thing I've left to get this whole thing out is this supply line down here, and it's a 16mm nut on there. So we'll see how I can get in here in order to get it off. Yeah, I'll tell you if there's any good way to do it. Alright everyone, so I was messing with this for about 45 minutes now, trying to get this lower supply line nut off. I tried fitting it through the bottom to access it. I tried from up here. I just couldn't get enough leverage, And so what I ended up doing was taking the pulley off right inside here, and that gave me quite a bit more room and more leverage to get that nut off. It was on there extremely tight, so I think that's probably the best way to do that. I'll show you guys how the pulley puller works here in a second after I get this pump out. So like I said, I took the pulley off to gain access to that supply line bolt down here. So just real quick how it works. Gonna be kind of hard with just one hand, but you place these parts on like that, get it like that, and then put the shaft in like so, and then there's that goes around this whole thing. So I'll do that real quick. So as you can see, it's all kept together. So now just turn it until you start feeling some resistance. Once you feel some resistance, you have to get just an adjustable wrench, put it here, and it's a 16 millimeter socket. Put it up here, and then just hold the adjustable wrench and then go clockwise with the socket wrench, and then you'll feel it. It'll slowly start to lift this whole pulley out, and eventually it'll just come off. So here's my remanufactured pump from AC Delco. Cost me I believe $60, and it came with a new seal for that supply line. So here's the old one. It was pretty beat up, really thin on one side. Yeah, so that new seal just goes right on there. And from here, I think we'll just, there's not much to it, just the whole process in reverse. So the power steering pump's back in, it's mounted again. For those of you interested, the torque specs for those 3 bolts are apparently 18 foot-pounds, so not very high at all. I have my supply line attached down there. My return line still needs to go on. It's still floating. And from there, I think we're ready for the drive belt to go back on. So, yep, I'll be back with you in a second. Alright, so the Serpentine belt's back in. It was slightly challenging just with the radiator fan, but with a little bit of patience, it worked out just fine. So the tensioner down there, this upper radiator hose was in the way, in my case, for this long serpentine tool that I loaned from AutoZone. Instead, I used just a normal socket wrench and got in on this side, and had enough leverage to get the belt on just from that. So yeah, now I'm gonna fill her up with fluid, once again lift it, cycle the wheel like I did at the beginning of the video, and hopefully that'll bleed out as much air as possible. If you have a vacuum pump, that's the better option for bleeding out all the air out of the system, but hopefully this will do for me. So other than that, just put the air filter box back in and make sure everything's connected. There's a few connectors still that need to be connected, but I think we're nearing the end here. Alright, so the air filter box is back in. The fluid's in, the air's bled as much as it could be the way I was doing it. And now we'll go take it for a drive, see if the belt is on correctly. And other than that, Thank you guys for watching, and have a good day.